for this exciting discussion on global issues, which is particularly relevant for all of us as we prepare to take on our roles in the model United Nations.
I am thrilled to have our postgraduate seniors from our school, Mr. Chen Kong, our distinguished speaker, and Mr. Ed and Sui Kong. Mr. Kong studied global development and now works for the UK government in the green energy sector. He has volunteered in countries like Africa and India, focusing on areas affected by water resource challenges.
So today, Mr. Cole will talk about the importance of youth involvement in world issues and how we, as young leaders, can contribute to global discussion through the model United Nations.
I encourage all of you to listen closely, as what we learn today can help guide us on our discussions in the model UN and, more importantly, shape how we think about our responsibilities as young global citizens.
Without further ado, let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. Chen Kong.
I firstly say your English is really excellent. Much better than my Mandarin. So hi everyone, my name is Ben. Just to make sure I've got the right slides on. My father is from here in Sibu, so I'm half French, half Chinese, but I was born in London. So I've come all the way here, and I hope I can deliver a lecture that you guys find interesting. Can everyone hear me clearly at the back first? Is everything okay? Yeah? No, you can't hear me? How about now? Is this better? Okay. Let's talk directly into it like this. I'm not used to this mouse. You'll have to give me a second. So your teacher, Mrs. Xia, asked me to talk about the Model United Nations and the importance of youth involvement in national and international affairs. I understand this is your final year of school. I'm having a bit of trouble because the things on here are not the same as on here. It's two different computers. So this is your final year of school. Now is really a good time to think about the opportunities ahead of you and really what you want to do with your whole life ahead of you. So I've done my best to make this lecture about things I wish someone had told me when I was your age. So just to give a structure of this talk, we're going to start by asking what are the big problems facing the world today. I understand you've been looking at the United Nations development program and the Sustainable Development Goals and so on, so it'll link in right to that. We will ask ourselves, how can we prepare to solve these problems and the things that we study and the kinds of work that we try to get. I will give a little bit of a story about what I did when I left school, what I studied, what jobs I've had, and some suggestions for what you guys could do once you graduate. We'll have a short little break after that, and then we'll get into the United Nations itself, what it does, how it was founded, milestones it has achieved, but also criticisms it has faced. We'll then look at Model United Nations and how to make one, since that is really the core focus of this talk. And then I'll offer some closing thoughts and recommended reading before moving on to Q&A. So here I've got some diagrams I made on world issues. On the left, in the red, we have major global issues that concern us all. And on the right, we have smaller scale personal issues that will be of significance to us as individuals. So I want you to have a look at these concepts. And could everyone raise their hands for me, just to begin with? Everybody put your hand up, just one hand up. All of you, every single one. Okay, thank you very much. So now put them down again. I've given you, you mustn't be shy, so I'm gonna make you do a little exercise where you're gonna have to put it up and down a little bit, so be ready for that. So of these things that are here on the board, Who among you is worried when you graduate about what you're going to do in further studies, or what you're going to do at university? If you're thinking, I don't really know, I'm not sure, I'm worried, then you can raise your hand up. So who is worried about what they will study at university, or if they will even go to university at all? Is this something that's worrying people? Oh, you guys are very relaxed. You're not worried about anything. That's good. Okay. What about finding a job? Is anyone worried about finding a job? Okay. Okay. A lot more people are concerned about that. That makes sense. I was in the same position. Who is worried about climate change? No one is worried. You live in Malaysia. It's going to get very hot here. Am I speaking too quickly? Can people understand me okay? Yes. You just really are not worried about climate change? Ah, okay. How about finding a girlfriend or boyfriend? Who's worried about that? Very good, very good. The rest of you are lying. Anyway, so the idea is that all of these are linked. The personal and individual problems that we have on the right are fundamentally linked to the ones on the left. So for example, climate change, conflict, and war, these all damage the economy. This makes it harder to find a job. It makes it harder to get resources. During COVID-19, you might have seen shops maybe had less products. That's because the supply chain would have been disrupted. When things can't grow because of climate change, or when resources you can't get to them because there's a conflict zone there, it will affect the entire area that depends on it. Another thing is sexism and inequality. These things can affect things like what careers you can have. It can affect social attitudes, pressures you might experience maybe to get married or to find a certain way of life. And things like exploitation and racism, that can affect what opportunities people of a certain color or race can get in their work, and also what they can actually achieve in their personal lives. So the conclusion is that we can't just run away and hide from the big problems. They are directly connected to our personal lives. And they will only get worse if we don't face them. So how exactly do we do that? How do we tackle them? So there's this book by a guy that my dad doesn't like called Yuval Noah Harari. And he wrote a famous book called Sapiens. It's a worldwide bestseller. In it, he says many things. Some things I don't agree with. Some things he says I think are quite stupid. Like he says, Minecraft is capitalist. I go, huh? You break trees and you build a little house. It's not capitalist. But he does say some things that are quite intelligent. He says, we are the first generation ever where copying the previous generation is not a valid strategy for success. It's not going to solve the problems that we face. So what do I mean by this? Well, in a hunter-gatherer society, you could live by copying the previous generation's skills, like using a bow and arrow or going fishing. Gradually, everyone would get better at these skills. Actually, this picture here is of people here in Borneo who still follow this kind of way of life. Currently, they are facing some struggles because of jungle being burned to clear the way for palm oil plantations. We will talk a little bit more about this later on. 12,000 years ago, humanity discovered agriculture. So before that, humans would move everywhere all the time looking for food. When they discovered how to do farming, when they discovered settled agriculture, we had the first towns appearing, like for example, Jericho. And this was a revolution in a region of the world in the Middle East called the Fertile Crescent. This is where the first farms in the world were. Now, ironically, today, because of climate breakdown, this is one of the first regions where crops can't be grown as much or properly anymore. And again, we will be talking a little bit more about that later. Now, even after the Industrial Revolution, when we discovered steam, coal, and electrical energy, we still copied and slowly improved on the work of previous generations. We made iterative changes over long periods of time. War and conflict sometimes accelerated this development, But it is only in the last century, in the last 100 years, that things have begun to develop exponentially. So those of you that have done maths will know if a linear relationship means things slowly get better over time. When it's an exponential relationship, it goes slowly and then suddenly it gets faster and faster and faster. So in the last 150 years, because of the Industrial Revolution, society has changed more than in the entirety of history before now. It is also worth noting that this leap forwards has not necessarily made humanity much happier. So the invention of the steam engine actually directly led to mass poverty in Britain and even to child labor. The use of coal and oil, obviously, as you know, creates global warming, and that destroys our ecosystems. And AI and drone technology are used for mass surveillance and for, well, missile strikes that often hit civilians. We will talk about this as well in a minute. Now, speaking of in a minute, I want you to look at this. This is the IAEA's website. Has anyone heard of the IAEA? I could say, ah, yeah. So it's the International Atomic Energy Agency, and it was founded by Einstein and Oppenheimer, who I'm sure you've heard of, and the other scientists that helped to develop the nuclear bomb in the Second World War. So today they continue to represent some of the most intelligent people and their sobering view on the state of society. They created this concept called the Doomsday Clock, which represents how close we are to the collapse of our civilization, and that's not sort of magical extravagance, they really mean it, based on how close we are to destroying things with technology of our own making, or through extracting too many resources or damaging the environment. So they think we are currently at 90 seconds till midnight, which is the closest we have ever been historically. Closer even than the height of the Cold War, which only got to 7 minutes, not to 90 seconds. So they think it's really bad right now. And I quote this from their website. Ominous trends continue to point the world towards global catastrophe. The United States, Russia, and China are all spending huge sums to expand or modernize their nuclear arsenals, adding to the ever-present danger of nuclear war through mistake or miscalculation. In 2023, the Earth experienced its hottest year on record, and massive floods, wildfires, and other climate-related disasters affected millions of people around the world. Meanwhile, rapid and worrisome developments in the life sciences and other disruptive technologies, such as AI, accelerated, while governments only made feeble efforts to control them. So the things we're experiencing today are not just a bit weird, an exception, they are fundamentally unprecedented, and the things are really bad. These dangers are because the rate of our social, cultural, and political change cannot keep the pace with our level of advancement of technology. Our education, attitudes, and laws are not up to date and are constantly falling further behind. With the internet, advanced robotics, genetic engineering, and even AI, things are changing too quickly for copying, as we were saying earlier, to be useful anymore. Moreover, the world has over 8 billion people now. I actually remember when I was in school, we hit 7 billion, and I remember exactly where I was at the time. I was in a geography lesson, and there's a clock that counts down the world population. We went from 6, 999, 999, 999 to 7 and 9 zeros. So now we're at 8 billion, and we're still growing, but we're running out of resources. So the amount that this population, that this world can support is no longer really in check with how many people there are. Either we have to reduce how much we consume, or we have to really think about our way of life. So climate change, war, and poverty are only going to get worse if we repeat the mistakes of our predecessors, of the people who came before us. We can't keep trying to start fights with other countries. That's a little bit of what the idea of the UN is, but how successful it is we'll get onto in a minute. But we can't keep doing that because that's what brought us to this catastrophic situation in the first place. We need to break out of this vicious cycle. This means we are faced with the very daunting task of having to think for ourselves, coming up with our own solutions, and perhaps hardest of all, challenging the older generations that have created these problems in the first place, but still occupy the positions of authority. Oops. So what to do? Well, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I was in the exact same position as you guys. I was finishing school in London, and I was worrying about all these issues and wondering what I could do about it. I knew two things. Firstly, that I would need to learn a lot more about how the world works and what tools we have available to make it better. But secondly, that just studying is not enough. You can read a lot of books, but if you don't actually take action, it won't have any meaning. So I decided to enroll on some courses at university that would allow me to do both. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this journey in a second. So, what did I study? I did a bachelor's in geography and economics in Lancaster, which is roughly here. And I did a master's in global development, which is sort of a mix of geography and economics, but also anthropology, political science, and some things like that. And that was in Copenhagen, which is in Denmark, over here, just on top of Germany. This doesn't mean you have to study this kind of degree to help make the world better. There are many ways through science or art or business to improve our society, but I would argue that there is an essential minimum level of understanding about how the world works that is required to be able to take conscious and conscientious action, which means properly educating yourself is critical, regardless of what your profession is or what you want it to be. So I'll return to that idea shortly while I share a little bit more about my personal journey. So the WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, is something that was set up to try and encourage businesses to take part in the UN Human Development Goals. So I was able to go there. Here's a picture of part of the conference. I was able to go there because at university I entered a essay competition, and this is actually, I want to go on a little bit of a sidetrack, a little bit of a tangent and say, a lot of people seem to think, oh, competitions are very scary, maybe I won't win it. Doesn't matter. When I entered it, I was the only one who submitted an essay, so I won automatically. And I want to emphasize that so many people psych themselves out and think, oh, there's no way I could win this. But you've got to remember, everyone else is doing that too. So when you see, oh, there's a competition that gives you a chance to go to, I don't know, Kuala Lumpur or Madrid or New York, and you just have to do this or that, do it, go for it, because most people will never even have a go. So you're actually competing against far less people than you think. So always enter competitions. That's something I want to recommend. So we flew out to India in Chennai, formerly known as Madras when the British were there. And we met up with industry specialists and world leaders in a 5-day conference discussing climate change issues. We actually helped to host the event. There were some other people from our university who ended up coming as well. And this is my team here. And we got to learn a lot about what is currently being done to deal with problems like water access, which I understand some of you have studied, decentralized power generation, and of course tools for sustainable agriculture. This is a picture of me and another teammate with Peter Bakker, who's in charge of the WBCSD. He founded it. Behind us, I'm sure it will look quite familiar to you, weirdly looks like a halo around my head, are the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is what the Conference for Sustainable Development is actually trying to reach or help reach. I keep forgetting that when I scroll on here, it's on there, not on here. So we also got to visit the local area and see how people live there in India. We went to a local school where we helped to teach some lessons, which I guess is also kind of what I'm doing right now. So here is also a much younger and dumber looking version of myself with a local class of 11-year-olds, and we helped to teach them a little bit of English while we were there. So it wasn't just about doing sort of rubbing shoulders with big business leaders, it was also about trying to actually get engaged with the local community. So in my postgraduate study, he said, almost spitting into the microphone, I did a master's degree at the University of Copenhagen, and there was a field trip to Tanzania, which is near the east coast of Africa. So my team studied education there, so we actually went to local schools. I think I have enough time to talk a little bit about that. So in Tanzania, which is again a former British colony, as many countries are, they used to be made to study English throughout, but when they gained independence, they wanted to study in Swahili instead, which makes more sense because it's their local language. But then through a series of successive governments, they started doing half and half, which is really stupid. They would go to primary school and it would be in Swahili, and then suddenly it would be in English in secondary school, and lots of students had no idea what was going on. You basically had a huge divide between the public school students who are poorer and they only knew Swahili, and the private school students who are taught in English from the age of 0, and so they could speak throughout. So there was a big problem there, and we were trying to investigate possible solutions for it. So here is actually a picture of us with some local school children. Another team wanted to study the pollution in a local river, but it was forbidden because we discovered that the pollution was because the government had an ammunition factory upstream. They were making bullets, and they were dumping the waste products of the bullets into the river, so we weren't allowed to study it. So I guess the conclusion of that is that not everyone wants to make the world better. Some people are just determined to control and to dominate through violence, and that's why the UN can't always get things done. People are trying to undermine it, but we'll return to that later. So on a brighter note, field work and doing causes that take you to other countries is an opportunity to see the world. It's a very big place, it's very beautiful. Tanzania is obviously a tropical country, so it looks a little bit like Malaysia, but not completely. The earth there is really, really red, which it isn't here, and that's something that I found quite amazing. But we should seize every chance we get, really, to know more about its landscapes and its people. Only really by understanding how to live harmoniously with both the earth itself, which gives us food, and with other people that we have to share it with, can we really survive. Because at the end of the day, we live here. This is our planet, this is our habitat, and if we ruin it, well, then we won't have food to drink, food to eat and water to drink. Most analysts, unfortunately, actually think that the next wars will be fought over clean water, which we are running out of. I'm not saying this to make you panic and think, oh God, we're all going to die in the future, but you guys seem really chill. You weren't worried about climate change or anything, so I don't think anything can shake you. But maybe you should be a bit worried. I'm saying these facts to keep in mind. You should think about these things when you're choosing where you want to study, where you want to work, who you vote for, and what causes you volunteer or donate to. Can one person change the world? The answer is no, of course not. There's 8 billion of us, so it's quite hard to do that. And even me myself, I've been quite focused on trying to do these things, but I've only done a tiny bit, a drop in the ocean really. What I do today is I actually work in green energy for the UK government. It's not changing the world, but it's a small step in the right direction. I actually help people to get renewable boilers. I think this will be a slightly alien concept in a hot country like Malaysia. Britain is cold, really cold. So here, maybe eventually you will get renewable aircon. In the UK, we're trying to get renewable heating. But in any case, the key takeaway here is that we have to do our best to make as much of a difference as we can. We don't know how big of an impact it might have in the long run, so we shouldn't lose hope. However, you shouldn't go crazy and think, oh, if I don't do the best I can all the time, everything will catch fire and we'll all die. You can't put it all on yourself. You need to be reasonable and know your own limits. And don't get depressed if you can't change the world by yourself. Remember that there's a lot of other people who feel the same way, who do want things to get better. Even if you're quite relaxed about it like you guys are, you know that things are not okay, but you must also know there's a lot of people who also feel the same way as you and want to try and work to make things better. And in general, my advice would be that a healthy mix of optimism and cynicism. Does everyone know what cynicism means? I'll take that as a no. So cynicism is basically, you've probably heard of fake news, right? Cynicism is when you assume somebody might not be telling you the truth. And a good example is, a lot of people, at least in my country, think recycling is important. But actually most recycling goes to landfill sites. So it's a con, really. So cynicism would be thinking, is it really going there? And finding out the truth for yourself, rather than just taking it at face value and assuming everyone is always being honest. So I think that's the best way to navigate the world. You keep your spirits high, but you don't be an idiot. And be realistic and look after your mental health. So, extracurricular opportunities. I know that, I'm going to drink water, hang on. So I know that not everyone will necessarily want to go to university, or there might be commitments they have that prevent that. But obviously that's not the only way to change the world. There are often local opportunities to do good. For example, I looked online and I found out the Sibu Wildlife Sanctuary here in Sibu is currently trying to recruit volunteers to help them manage it. So if anyone has some free time, I would highly recommend that. There are also national and international opportunities for both work and studies. Sometimes they are funded. You might not even need to pay all or even any of it. So if you're short on funds, that could be a potential opportunity. Actually, one of my classmates at the University of Copenhagen, before he enrolled on the program, he was a goat herd in Cambodia. His family was very poor, but he did well in his school exams. And the UN gave him a grant that allowed him to go for free all the way to Denmark, basically across the entire world, to study there. He was a really great guy. And so that's really something to think about. Even if you think, oh, maybe I can't afford to go to university, look into these courses that are funded. Use Google. You'll have smartphones. I didn't have one when I was your age, so make the most of it. Actually, I graduated from my master's in 2020, obviously in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and nobody was hiring. In fact, everyone was getting fired because companies couldn't afford it. So it didn't matter that I had a degree. Nobody was accepting any applications. So instead of wasting my time, I used the internet to find local volunteering opportunities near me in London. This is a picture of my sister and I making aid packs for refugee children that are entering the UK. This is as part of the Separated Child Foundation, which most people who volunteer here don't have degrees at all, so anyone can really help here. And what they do is they help these children who arrive without their parents with both material and mental health support when they reach Britain. So the moral of the story is really that everyone can make a difference. And I'm sure there are many initiatives like this in Sibu, and even if there are not, you guys are young and you can set them up. If you've got some time after school, especially once you graduate, in between graduating from school and going to university or finding a job, there is time to do things like this. And I know that at a good school, especially a religious Catholic school like this, there must be people who are willing to support and fund initiatives to help people in need. So do give that some thought. Anyway, now I think we should have a tiny little break, because I know normally I think Ms. Xia told me that at 2:20 you have a break. So if you could stay within the room, but you can chat freely amongst yourselves, maybe explain to each other what has been said so far, if any of you found me hard to understand. And maybe if you want, also think of some questions to ask me at the end. So I'll resume this in 5 minutes, okay?